This is the first of 4 videos that have been produced to help you prepare for the first part of the AQA English language exam. Question 1 is a reading and retrieval question, and it is based on source 1. You will be aiming to synthesize the information in your own language and support your summary with appropriate quotes. So what is meant by retrieval? Well, you will be pulling out the important key information and producing a summary in your own words. This question is worth 8 marks, and you will have approximately 12 minutes to complete it. You should aim to find 5 to 6 relevant points. You're not analysing language here, but you need to show the examiner that you fully understand the text, and you can do this by selecting and using short embedded quotes to prove what you know. Your evidence will need to be chronological, and you'll need to show that you understand the beginning, middle and end of the text. Not only do you include facts that you've learned, you'll need to identify the meaning between the lines. Here I'm talking about inference. This question is about providing a summary of the text in your own words and looking for the subtle meaning. You should be able to pick up counter-arguments in question 1 text. By this I mean there is an alternative viewpoint. Can you find this? What does it suggest? Often you can tell what the writer thinks through finding adjectives and intensifiers in the text. For instance, if it is the greatest show on earth, this suggests that the writer favours it. The superlative greatest has been used. In addition, arguments are often marked by discourse markers such as on the contrary or however, so look out for these. In addition, the writer's vocabulary will guide you as to her or his viewpoint. If he uses the words dirty, dingy and damp, then of course the experience wasn't favourable. Look to see whether the tone of the writing differs, for instance from something pleasant to something scary. So to start, let's have a look at the question and then the source document. For this video, we are going to be using the January 2011 AQA English Language Higher paper, and this is question 1. Think about underlining the key words from the question. You need to understand what is being asked of you. For instance, the title, What do you learn from Elizabeth Hyde's article about where she has been and what she has been doing, is in 3 parts. Firstly, we want to know about Elizabeth. Secondly, where has she been? And lastly, what has she been doing? And you can use the word learn in your answer. Next, we need to read the text carefully for meaning and try to identify at least 6 key points. Then you will need to write that information in your own words using embedded quotes. This is the text, source 1. It is a travel article available in The Guardian online. I'm going to talk you through the text and highlight what I think are important points. You could make notes as I speak, and then we can compare your notes with the write-up at the end. First, we learned that Elizabeth Hyde went rafting on the Grand Canyon, and her guide had just 2 rules, and the rules were stay in the boat. In fact, she went on a 13-day, 225-mile trip down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. She went with her husband and her 3 teenage children. She would be living on a 6-meter raft with masses of gear for 2 weeks, and she says this would be our world for the next 2 weeks, which suggests that there'll be little privacy and it's going to be cramped. In addition, we learn that she's going to be part of a mixed group, the youngest being 13-year-old twin daughters, which were Elizabeth's daughters, and a couple in their mid-70s. And this suggests that people will have to be tolerant of each other and work together. As she writes, you can't be shy on a Grand Canyon River trip. We learned that she's going to be on the water for 5 to 8 hours every day, and she's going to be eating, sleeping and bathing which doesn't sound very nice, however, is compensated for by one of the most spectacular environments on Earth. We learned that the passengers were perched on the side tubes, which gave them great views. But she kept on straining her neck as she was trying to look up at the steep walls that were closing in on them. Although she felt uncomfortable, she describes the Grand Canyon as a Disneyland experience, which suggests she found it magical, even though she was plunging and getting drenched. Elizabeth compares the journey as both exciting and frightening and refers to it as a white knuckle roller coaster ride. But it appears to be worth it because she gets these great views. Now the article starts off with one basic rule which was given by Ed the guide, and that was to stay in the boat, and we come back towards Ed's rules at the end again. However, we learn that Elizabeth broke the rule as she was the only one who was ejected into the foaming madness, which suggests that at times she found completing this activity a sign of madness. Although she was sucked down and spun around, this scary experience left her feeling alive. More than I've ever been, she says. Finally, on the last stretch, she's feeling dirty and uncomfortable and most likely cold, and her hair held about a pound of silt. However, the whole experience gave her the desire to run away and become a river guide. Okay, did you make your notes? Let's have a look at what the final write-up might look like. I'd like you to have a look at that and tell me what you notice. We learned that Elizabeth Hyde went on a 13-day, 225-mile trip down the Colorado River with her husband and 3 teenage children. Notice the quotes from the text are embedded in the speech marks or quotation marks. In fact, Discourse Marker, Elizabeth and her family would be living on the raft, which was full of masses of gear with up to 6 other people, suggesting, and that is inference, there would be little privacy and it would be cramped. In addition, another discourse marker, we learned that they were a mixed group ranging from Elizabeth's 13-year-old twin daughters to a couple in their mid-70s. That's the rest of the quote. Suggesting, this is your inference, that people would have to be tolerant of each other and work together. As she writes, you can't be shy on a Grand Canyon river trip. We learned that she was on the boat. Now this goes back directly to the question, what do you learn about Elizabeth? Well, we learned that she was on the boat for 8 hours a day and she was eating, sleeping and bathing together. But the experience was compensated for, and this is where you're showing contrast. She found it to be one of the most spectacular environments on Earth. The passengers were perched on the side tubes, and this is giving us some more information about where she's been and what she's doing, which gave them great views. But, and this is your contrast here, she was straining her neck to gaze up at the walls. However, although it sounds uncomfortable, we learned the experience was Disney-like, and your inference suggesting she found it magical even though she was plunging and getting drenched. Moreover, there's a useful discourse marker there. She compared the journey, both exciting but frightening, as a roller coaster ride, trying to see the great views. It's important to make sure that you cover the beginning, middle and end of the text. So the article starts off with one basic rule given by Ed the guide, and that was to stay in the boat. However, we can see a contrast in ideas here. We learn, again, what do we learn about Elizabeth? That Elizabeth broke this rule by being ejected into the foaming madness, which suggests, and this is your inference here, that at times she found completing this activity a sign of madness. Although she was sucked down, we've got a discourse marker here, although she was sucked down and spun around, and that's your embedded quote, this scary experience left her feeling alive. Finally, discourse marker suggesting you're coming to the end of the text. On the last stretch, she was dirty, uncomfortable, and most likely cold, and that's our inference. And the embedded quote is hair held about a pound of silt. However, your discourse marker suggesting that although she was dirty, uncomfortable, and cold, she found the whole experience gave her the desire to run away and become a river guide, which tells us that she found the experience amazing. So to reiterate the key points, there is meaning extracted from the whole text with embedded quotes. There is inference, and this is signposted with the words suggests. In addition, discourse markers have been used to help the reader follow the ideas. I hope you found this video useful.